Welcome, Pick Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason on this Monday. Yes, I'm back from vacation. And you know what? The year of chaos. We said this was going to be the year of chaos. Little did I know. You take 1 week off. Just 1 week. And presidential candidates get shot, right? Another one I guess we found out that our votes really don't matter, do they? As the president has decided, yes, I'm not going to seek the nomination and everything else in between. But again, this is why we've been telling you. This is a good year. It really, obviously, gold and silver have been great. The stock market's been great. Look at today, right? First, the stock market rose on Joe Biden winning, right? Oh, yeah, that's going to be great. And then it said, wait, nope, Donald Trump's going to win. Then the stock market went up again today. Now it's Kamala Harris. Oh, yeah, great. It's going up right. The whole classic bubble mentality, but of course, we're getting ready for what comes after, and that's the part that I think all of us are scratching our heads and wondering what really is going to come next, and how can we believe anything that we're seeing? It defies logic, doesn't it? The whole Trump thing, this random 20-year-old somehow gets on a rooftop with perfect line of sight, and everybody's kind of, it's almost very similar to the Palestinian and Israeli thing, where you had to believe like all of these things had to go wrong for all of that to happen, and then it happens again here, and it just, I don't know. I'm just really wondering, man, what are these people up to, right? And I just feel like, you know what, even though I feel like I'm tuned in, I'm not tuned in. I'm not tuned in at all, right? These guys, they're so far ahead of us. And then, of course, yesterday, the big announcement, Joe Biden, well, you guys have convinced me that I can't win, so therefore I'm going to drop out. We'll have somebody else. And, we've said this for a long time, Jason. These votes, they pretend that we really have a say. I guess we really don't, do we? Because now we'll see. Is it going to be Kamala? I don't know. People are still talking about Big Mike. And I'll say it again. It doesn't matter. They already have a plan. I think whoever's the next president, I'm going to say this, not any fault of their own, but it's going to get very, very, very ugly. We'll talk a lot about that today. Our toll-free number, 800-951-0592. The website at allamericangold.com. And I'll just say this. I don't have my glasses. I lost them in the Atlantic Ocean in about 2 feet of water. And I'm so blind. It was so funny. So we, while I'm on vacation, I go to, got to get the what do you call it, the eye doctor appointment because my prescription's too old and this and that, and I go to the counter and say, okay, well, here it is, I got my thing, and make me some glasses. And the guy's like, oh, we can't make these. Wow. Man, we can make like a regular person's glasses. We can't make these glasses, right? It's got to be ordered and this and that. So maybe before the end of the week, I'll be able to see again. And I'm still waiting. They say, like, if you lose one of your senses, that the other senses get better, right? I'm still waiting for that to happen. It hasn't happened yet. My senses are not better.
I think you have to take the one sense and completely get rid of it. You have to go blindfolded, and then suddenly you start tuning into it. If you're going to go into the chi or whatever it is and get higher, connection to your surroundings, I think you actually have to take away the bad sight. It has to be no sight. so you're still trying to see. How can you focus on hearing if you're squinting?
Right, so really bad sight, that's not good enough, right? So maybe, I guess, you know what, that's probably as good as explanation as any. If I just was totally blind, then maybe I could, like, hear and smell better. But nonetheless, yeah, I'm back. It was very, very interesting there and we were in Myrtle Beach, very Republican area. They had all the Trump stores out there, and of course, the president, and now I guess former president and president-elect gets shot. Then they have the convention, right, and that whole thing, and then this weekend the announcement from Joe Biden and Jason. I mean, there's so many things to talk about. And then this week, listen, we've got inflation numbers coming on Friday. We got GDP coming on Thursday. So I would say this: if we had gold hit new all-time highs, right? Kind of approached 2,500. We've had some nice profit taking. We're going to see what the new high lows are going to be, somewhere probably in the 2,300 and change area. But I'll say this. I said it before I went on vacation. Remember, I said, hey, buy gold before Thursday. And, of course, the gold ended up going to record highs. I'll say it again. Buy gold early this week. I think you're going to get rewarded for it. But Jason, there's so many different places to go. It's almost like there's too many things to talk about.
We are sufficiently entertained at this point in time, aren't we?
Yes. Are you not entertained? We're going to do our best to do that for you. We'll be back after the break. I'll just say this, that we've likened our politics to pro wrestling. If you guys have ever watched or heard, we don't talk a lot of politics on this show, but on the half-empty cup we do. And we've said this for a long time. And all of a sudden, here comes Hulk Hogan, right? Let me tell you something, brother. Right? Ripping his shirt off.
He's doing Macho Savage impersonations. Who that guy's dead now.
Right.
You did the whole thing right there, Joe. We're gonna have plenty of that. We're gonna have plenty of that when we come on the next hour. There's so much that we can have.
Yes. Well,
Jack cut a small video just off the there's just so much. There's so much to be suspicious about, and it's really good distraction, isn't it, Joe? The one thing I started thinking at the end of the last week, and then here comes Joe Biden quitting. I'm thinking, man, Joe better get some really good numbers out, because I have a feeling they're trying to hide something, because there is too much distraction going on right now, and what's getting ready to happen. It's setting up, and war with Iran, they're going to blame the Iranians for this 20-year-old and whatever happened, and war with China. I've been starting to look at the drums beating about war with China, and we got to separate the Russians and the Chinese. And the war hawks on both sides, Democrats and Republicans, they're pounding drums hard right now.
And we keep telling you, you need to be more diversified than ever. The yield curve, we haven't talked about the bond yield curve.
It's record.
Record inversion. What does inversion mean? It means and they like to call it the 2-year note, but all these shorter dated Treasury notes, you should pay less for that, right? That's normally how it's supposed to work. When a market is healthy, hey, I'm going to loan you money for 3 months. I'm going to loan you money for a year. I'm going to loan you money for 2 years. You should get less interest for loaning the government money for a shorter period of time. Obviously, right? I'm going to loan you money for 10 years. I'll loan you money for 20 years, 30 years. Well, gosh, you should get paid more for that. That's not what's happened. Matter of fact, it is the longest stretch ever. Now, what does that mean? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It's a really bad thing. Because if you look at, well, what are the other previous longest stretches of inversion in the bond yield curve in the United States history? Well, let's see. 1987 was in the top 5. Right? That wasn't a very good year for those of you that remember the 87 crash. How about the 70s? That was another really long stretch of inversion. Right? And, of course, we know what gold and silver did, right? That was an inflationary period. Then we had the financial crisis, 07, 08. That was at the time, the second longest inverted yield curve ever. The longest one ever was the Great Depression. Right? We have now taken all of those out. And boy, does that make a lot of sense, doesn't it? Like we're talking about boom and bust cycles, right? And we're talking about, hey, we think this year of chaos is going to kind of be the end of the bubble here. Get ready for a very dark period that is coming to the debt markets because we understand the signal that they're sending us. And this is why we keep talking about, like our friends over at Y-Refi. Hey, be smart here. Maybe you've got, I don't know, a couple $1 million in an IRA. Take some of that. Call Y-Refi. Lock in at 10.25%. Get a great fixed rate of return that, hey, you know what? I don't care what happens. I've got this, but it's not correlated to Wall Street. It's not correlated to the stock market. It's not correlated to the Fed. They don't play any games. They don't charge fees. You can turn your income on. You can turn it off. You can do whatever the heck you want with it. If you need your money back early, they don't attack your principal. It's just a great thing to do, and it's really a great thing to feel good about. Check them out. InvestYRefi.com. Just call them. You got to have at least $50,000. That's kind of a big thing there. And you can use an existing IRA. Some of you can use a 401k. Call them. 888-Y-REFI-24. But, Jason, we're talking about this yield curve. And we're watching. This is the longest stretch ever. And the thing about the yield curve, which is really maybe the best of all the indicators. They always end the same way. Inverted, any type of length of an inverted yield curve always leads to economic trouble. Right? Let's just say an inverted yield curve, 4 or 5 months. That usually leads to a shallow recession. Right? When it gets longer. Right, a year. Well, now you're talking about, okay, that's a pretty good recession, right? That one kind of hurts, right? Those are things that hurt. But when you get past that, now we're talking what? A year and a half, maybe a little longer now, approaching 2 years of this inverted yield. When you get past that, every single time, it has been dramatic. And the longer it goes, the worse it is. Think about the 2 worst yield curve inversions ever before this one, the financial crisis and the Great Depression. This is what is coming. And I don't care who it is that sits there. There's nothing they're going to do about it, Jason, because it's simply, this is how fiat money works.
The yield curve is kind of like getting onto the roller coaster and like slowly being pulled into the ride. And we've been saying how this is kind of a slow motion crash. It's happening, taking a lot longer. And the longer the yield, just as Joe just said, I'm repeating his words. The longer the yield curve, the bigger the problem on the end of it. The bigger the roller coaster ride is going to be, Joe. It's going to be massive. We know it's going to be massive. They didn't fix 2008. They enriched themselves with 2008.
boy, it's a great comment. That's really, I always use the Big Daddy analogy. If you ever saw that movie with Adam Sandler and the kid shows up at the door and he wets the bed and he puts newspaper over it. He spills the milk. He puts newspaper over it. He throws up. He puts newspaper over it, right? That's what they did. They just put some newspaper over it. Of course, what is newspaper? Money. Lots of it, right? Lots of money, right? They just coated it all. I mean, we're living in a world that's covered in newspaper now, right? It's just covered. And everybody is looking at this and doing the same exact thing. Now, in 1933, they took the gold away. In the 70s, what did they do? Well, that's right. They told the foreign governments, you no longer, when your treasury notes mature, you can no longer get gold for it, right? They called it the gold window. Right? And they closed that gold window and said no more. And remember the speech. People don't want to really learn about economics because in the speech where Richard Nixon closed that gold window, he was right about one thing. Everything will be fine as long as America buys American. That was, and from an economic standpoint, that was true. Hey, it wouldn't matter if we just bought American stuff. Well, gosh, that hasn't happened for how long now, right? First we had Reaganomics, right? Then we went to NAFTA and GATT, right, with Bill Clinton. And then it went, they call it free trade, right? And look at what the debts have done since then. And you can really start to understand that the Federal Reserve, who claims, this independent organization, that they're the leaders of economics, they're actually doing the exact opposite. This is why all fiat money goes to zero. This is why J.P. Morgan, Jamie Dimon, said, hey, gold is money. Everything else is credit. Everything else is credit. And that's exactly what it is. Your dollar bills are credit. It's not money, it's credit. And what the credit market is saying, the U.S. debt market is saying is, hey, guys, you better get ready because something really, really, really bad is going to happen in the credit markets. And why do things really bad happen in the credit markets? Well, it's always the same, right? Too much of it. Gosh, we gave people way too much credit, and now they can't pay the bill. And you saw all the bank earnings. None of them were great, by the way. None of them. I know, but the cheerleader said it was good. And they all passed the stress test. There's some questions about whether Goldman did or didn't, but they gave them a pass. And of course, what did they all do? They all borrowed a bunch of money to buy back their own stock. That's what they all did. All the big banks did it. But if you looked inside, all of these loan loss provisions, Jason, they're starting to pile up. Billions and billions and billions of dollars of non-performing debt. And I think that's kind of what the Treasury market's saying. Listen, we're about $40 billion away now from $35 trillion. We're $40 billion away. So in the next, week or two, maybe 3 at the most, we're going to be over $35 trillion. And the sad part is, Jason, we're in this time now, July, August, September, October, right? November, December. These are bad months for tax collection. October, you get a little bit of money, but the rest of the year, we're talking about how are we going to see $37 trillion before the end of 2024? It's going to be close. My guess is whoever becomes the next president, by the time they get inaugurated, Jason, the debt's going to be $37 trillion.
It could be closer to 38 if you throw in some war. It depends on if the war is going to start before the election or after the election. But there's a lot of chit-chats, and so the spending. I think your numbers are right. You're just doing the numbers based off current spending. We just don't know what extra spending might be involved.
Well, I did hear Donald Trump wants to cut taxes again. But I did hear that, right? Okay, how much is that going to cost? Right? You got to remember, they all want it. Well, what are their plans? Well, I'm going to spend money, right? And how do you spend money? Well, you spend money by either cutting taxes or you spend money by what? Oh, well, I got this initiative, that initiative. Tariffs have been bantied about. We'll see what Harris has to say. I'm sure she's going to want to spend a bunch of money as well. But you're right, Jason. We don't know. This is with no unforeseen events. None. Anything that happens, I'm hoping that the GDP, because the two best quarters for GDP are the second and third quarters. That's if you look at GDP, and this is how they've done it because everything's seasonally adjusted and all this other nonsense. It's supposed to be the best, but I haven't seen a GDP forecast yet. Maybe I'll look during the break, see what the Fed is saying. But everybody's kind of saying, hey, it's not going to be a great number. What happens? I don't know. Do we slide? Do we start? Dare we say, have a negative GDP number coming before the election? I don't know. But none of that is factored into the numbers I just gave. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason here on this Monday. Jason and I, we see each other. I got a laptop that's literally, I don't know, maybe 2 feet away from me. I can touch it with my hand, so I'm, not very far. And he typed me a note during the break. And I couldn't read. I had to stand up and literally put my face up to the laptop. Yeah, I'm a mole that's just seeing the light. Everything. Not being able to see stinks. I'll just say that. Yeah. And to Jason's point, I can see, just not very good, right? The funny thing is I haven't been to the eye doctor in a long time. And they have some better equipment now. They're done with the eye chart thing, at least the one I went to, because I knew the first letter was E, because it had been E my whole life, They did away with that, and the doctor goes, can you read anything on this line? I'm like, no, right? And there's like 5 letters. I'm like, no, I can't read any of them. How about now, right? Finally, we got to something I could read. God knows how big it was. But nonetheless, I'll be blind for a few more days. I will say this. I got here extra early today because I was like, okay, it's going to take me a while to read all the stuff that I've got to read because, it's going to slow me down. But here's the good news. There's so much stuff going on in the world, I don't think it's going to matter. But let's talk gold here real fast. So right now, we've got gold, 23, I'm squinting to look, 23.85. And I like gold below 2,400 a lot because it's not going to stay here very long. It's not going to stay here very long. What is going to be? So think about the low, the high low before this latest breakout was like 2270, something like that, 2270, 2280. So I kind of like it here at like the low 2380s. That makes sense to me because that's, they kind of like to do this kind of stuff, the computers and all that. But are we going to see, is it going to be $75, $100? Right? Is the new higher low? How much higher is it going to be? I think this is a good range, especially with GDP and the PCE number coming out Thursday and Friday of this week. I just looked during the break, GDP anywhere from 1.5 to 2.5. And I want to say first quarter was like, 1.3? Something like that, first quarter GDP. So not great. But, we'll see how, if the number, my guess is, I'm going to guess 2. I'm going to kind of split it in the difference. But I wouldn't be surprised with a number that starts with a 1. But that'll be much lower than we've seen in the past. But I really think this is a good opportunity. $10 liberties today. I'll tell you this, they are no longer cheaper than 20s, but we're going to make them cheaper than 20s today. 1 through 19 at $1,295. If you buy 20 or more at $1,290, and that's like $2,580, and that's a really good opportunity. The one thing that we've seen so far since I've come back, so I was gone all last week, gold kind of hit those new highs. All of a sudden, the attempted assassination of Trump, followed by Joe Biden stepping down, not seeking the nomination. Premiums, Jason, have gone up. In other words, what the wholesalers, what the world is saying is, hey, guess what? Gold demand is only going to get stronger from here, and makes sense. We hit that sweet spot, and usually the summer's always the best time to buy gold normally. Right? But this summer's kind of, and we told you, we warned you that this summer was going to be different, that prices were going to stay elevated, and they have, but the premiums got better. Normally what we're going to see between now and, say, Christmas time, we're probably still going to see these premiums, Jason, run back up again. Well, it's still, believe me, this is a very, very affordable price. I could have easily seen it. You know what? If we were talking about a GDP of, say, negative 1%, instead of, somewhere, say around 2%, just negative 1%. These $10 liberties would probably be closer to $1,400, maybe even $1,450. And that tends to happen, right? We see this happen all the time. When the economy starts getting shaky or people get nervous, what happens? Premiums shoot up. So premiums still very affordable. $10 Liberty Gold. This is your pre-1933. The Liberties, 1866 to 1907. We keep telling you, there's a big difference between collectible and bullion gold. Not in price. It can be. I mean, you can, let's face it, you can buy a $10 Liberty for $1 million. Some rare $10 Liberty, sure. If you're a true collector, good for you. That's not why you buy these. Right? We want to buy them as less expensive as possible, as close to spot as possible. That's what we want to do. But we also want the ability to stay private. What does that mean? Simply, when I buy, sell, or trade, what happens? See, this is the part that people don't educate on. They just say, well, this one's the cheapest. Okay. And listen, sometimes private gold is the cheapest. Sometimes. Not right now, but sometimes. What they don't tell you is, well, when you go back to sell it, what happens? When you go to sell your gold, do you want to have to show your ID, have to give me your Social Security number, have to get a 1099 from my accountant? If you want those things, great. Great. I can sell you gold bars. I can. You call me, I'll gladly sell them to you, but that's what's going to happen. It's exactly what's going to happen. When you buy pre-1933 U.S. minted gold, don't ask me why. I don't write the laws. Guess what? I don't care how much you sell, how much you trade. I don't care what you do. Here's a check. Here's a bank wire. Have a nice day. You tell me what you prefer, right? And that's why when we talk about why do we like pre-1933 gold, that's why. Ask Lynette Zhang. She'll tell you, right? That's all she tells her customers to buy. There's a reason. Patriot Radio News Hour. Jason's giving me the magnifying glass. We're going to be back right after the break. 800-951-0592, $10 Liberties, half ounce. Pre-1933 U.S. minted gold, $1,295. If you buy 20 or more, $1,290. And I'm just, when we look at what we're seeing, gold and the demand for it, the diversification that's been going on. You think about all these countries, almost pretty much now. I mean, are we at that point now where almost every country in the world said, hey, give us our gold back? Just about. Right? There's a few left, but not very many. Then on top of that, record demand. I mean, we haven't had a year going back to 2006, I think, maybe 7, something like that. 2006, 2007, where countries haven't been adding to their gold every year for almost 20 years now. And the last several, breaking all the records. We talked about the inverted yield curve. You don't think that all these other people don't know? I mean, do they talk about it on the cheerleading channels? No, of course not. Look at today. Today's the best example I think I could come up with, right? Which is, hey, it doesn't even matter, right? Joe Biden drops out of the race. Wall Street doesn't care. It doesn't matter, right? Because it's bubble time. And it's getting ready to burst. They know it. We know it. When you think about, well, gosh, the longest yield curve inversion, they took the gold away with the Great Depression. The second longest, the financial crisis. What happened? Oh, that's right. I forgot. The whole credit market imploded. And now, this time around, Jason, why do I have a feeling that this is going to kick off the new currency, whatever that's going to be? You think about, of the longest on record, 33, the 70s, right, when they closed the gold window, and the financial crisis, which is really the start of coming up with the new money, which I think is going to be coming here very, very, very quickly. People have so much less time, and what a great distraction. You talked about distractions. What a great distraction, right? Who wants to listen to this when we can talk about Kamala Harris, right? And I know the Trump people probably feel really good right now because they think, just listen. There's a guy that's voted for Trump, and I'll say this right now. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to do it again for the third time. I thought the same thing when it was Joe Biden. I did. I'm like, how can this guy be president? Look at me. I mean, I was right. I mean, the guy's an idiot. But guess what? Stranger things have happened, and I don't pretend to even know anymore. They've blown me away by everything that's happened. But this is another indication to everybody out there. And it's so funny because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking every single line should be full right now. If people really knew what was coming, but they don't want you to know. And what a great distraction this is. I mean, it's incredible. I was gone 1 week. And I know, Jason and I have called this the year of chaos since January. 2024 is going to be the year of chaos. I had no idea how much chaos they're actually putting in front of us. And isn't that what we need? Think about the financial crisis. What were we doing? Going to war, right? We had the war, the Iraq war, right? The Afghanistan, right? We had all these other distractions that were going on, and Barack Obama, right? The first black president. I mean, Jason, it's almost like a carbon copy in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's always a little different. I mean, the '08 housing crash was almost a cover for the misdeeds of what was going on in the Middle East. They were kind of covering each other a little bit. I think the reason that was allowed to be in the news cycle so largely is because you could blame a bunch of bankers, or you can blame, the fingers were being pointed in all different directions. And the war in those countries you mentioned was it was going on for on and on and on, wasn't it? And the kind of spending that was going on. And then what did gold do in 2011? It just shot off, right? And I've heard many times, Joe, we've talked about it's possible that it was just speculation. It just went too high. But then we find out 10 years later there's this hush. We're printing $29 trillion. We're doing all this. Maybe what the $29 trillion, maybe that's what needed to be hidden. You have the economic collapse of the housing industry. Well, that was corrupt banks and regulatory agencies, the MBSs. You had the war going on. Meanwhile, this whole thing was collapsing in a magnificent way. And what did they do? They just secretly gave money to every country and every large corporation and bank that was sinking, Joe. That's what they covered up. They always cover up something financial. So they actually kind of let their belly show a little bit with the mortgage-backed securities that were collapsing. But that was just, that wasn't. You couldn't really blame the Fed for that, right? That was corruption in the financial sector. It still was never put on the Fed, who then printed $29 trillion. And where did that lead us? To COVID. 2019, the repo markets. Remember, Joe? And here we are, years of ridiculous behavior and the news cycle going crazy, Joe.
Yeah, you know what's funny? The government, right, just keeps spending money like we're in the middle of an emergency, because here's the reality. We are in the middle of an emergency. Patriot Radio News Hour will be back after the break. 800-951-0592, Patriot Radio News Hour. Joe and Jason here on this Monday. The big special of the day, $10 Liberties, 1 through 19, $1,295, 20 or more, $1,290 at 800-951. 0592. And Jason, we talked about yield curves, talked about the chaos, the distraction, because they don't want you to know we're in the middle of an emergency, right? I mean, let's face it, we're $40 billion. We could have, tomorrow it could be $35 trillion tomorrow. Seriously. I mean, $40 billion, nothing. It's nothing anymore. I mean, a good day, we only go $3 billion, $4 billion into debt on a good day. And we're sitting here talking about the government and the ridiculous amount of spending. They've been spending like it's been an emergency almost since 9/11, really. Pretty much this whole millennium. They've been spending like it's an emergency. And guess what? We've had two of the longest bond yield inversions ever. Matter of fact, the one we're in now, the longest ever. And we know what happens, right? Great Depression, financial crisis. Yep. But this one's even longer than both of those. So obviously it says to me, this thing's going to be much worse than even those two. And those two were horrendous, what happened. Be smart here. Understand, I know, well, it doesn't feel like an emergency. You're right. Because they've spent like it's an emergency. Now the problem is, guess what? Even with all that spending, we still can't really get out of our own way, can we? Look at how rarely does a week go by where we don't have at least one, if not two or three, terrible bond auctions. Happens all the time. We're one shock away. Have your gold put away before the shock gets here. I'm telling you. This is
Joe, the emergency is now. The emergency is happening right now. Here's the thing. Don't believe what your TV is saying. The TV's not going to tell you that there's a real emergency going on. Financially, there is a real emergency that's been going on, and just like Joe said, since 9/11, this financial emergency has been constant. And if you've been buying gold the whole time, you're sitting in a really good spot. Then, when the TV starts to talk about the emergency, it's too late. It's too late to get assets at a really good price. All the big wigs are going to have already positioned themselves, and they're going to leave you in the dust. You're going to be picking up the pieces and trying to figure out what happened when the news actually says, "Hey, COVID's here and it's going to destroy the world." Well, at that point, Joe, if I would have known COVID was going to be so destructive so quickly and drop the markets into a hole and then bounce back like a rubber ball, well, there was some opportunity there. But here's the thing. Gold did just fine right through that entire process, Joe. It kept you in a nice, solid place the entire time, Joe.
You know, gold's up 700% in the 20 years that I've been doing this. That's an annual rate of return of 35%. I'm just saying. That's the realities here. And I think that's low for what's coming next. 800-951-0592. Jason and I are coming back. I'm sure it's going to be quite the half-empty cup. Stay with us.